Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to paint this sunflower field with an orange sunset background. I did this on a 5x7-inch Arteza cotton canvas, but you could do this on any surface that you'd like. To start with, I'm taking some cadmium yellow deep hue, cadmium orange hue, and titanium white on a Royal & Langnickel R9 700 flat brush, and I'm just mixing them together in order to paint the background of the sky. Next, I'm adding a bit of cadmium red light hue to the orange colour that we already had and that yellow-orange colour that we used as well. All the materials that I've used in this video will be listed in the description, and I'm sorry that I can't remember the names of all the paints off by heart, so I'll just refer to them by the colours that they are. Here I'm using a Art synthetic 4 brush in order to map out where the clouds are going to go. I'm only doing the thicker part of the clouds at the moment because I'm going to use a more detailed brush to do the tails later. The placement of these clouds and the shape of them is pretty random. I'm just doing them where I think looks good and what size I want to, so really just go with what you feel looks best. Next, taking a Pro Art Series 16 filbert brush, I'm just going to put the tails of the clouds onto the canvas, and again I'm using that exact same color and I'm just thinning out the edges of the clouds. I'm also going to use this color and this brush to map out some thinner, wispier clouds like I'm doing right now. So essentially what I'm doing here is just drawing a straight line and then adding a tiny little bump to the center of it, or sometimes two bumps, in order to create the appearance of a more distant, faded cloud. I'm just going over all the clouds which I've done using that same color just to add a second layer of color to it so that they stand out a bit more. I'm only going over some of the smaller clouds with this color just so that the others look a bit faded so they appear more distant. Now taking some of the yellow and mixing it in with that color that we just made and a tiny bit of white, I'm going to add some highlights to the clouds. So I'm just adding this to the very top edges of them and then a tiny bit into the center. And I'm kind of tapping it out at the edges to blend it in together. I'm also going over some of the thinner, wispier clouds with this color too, and then adding just this color by itself in the background. Now taking some primary yellow and mixing it with titanium white, I'm gonna paint in the sun now. This is just a tiny circle in the center of the sky. So we left a gap for it when painting the clouds, so just put it in the center there. Now taking some burnt umber and mixing it with some Mars black, I'm gonna start painting in the center of the sunflowers. So essentially I'm just painting in some small circles, just completely randomly at the bottom of the canvas. I try to do the ones closer to the bottom of the canvas a bit bigger so that they appear as though they're closer to the viewer. I then do some tinier circles for the sunflowers in the distance. Again, the placement of this is completely random, just do where you feel they look best suited. Now taking some of the yellowy orange, mixing it with orange and more yellow orange, I'm going to start painting in the petals of the sunflowers. This is the first color of petals that we're going to be doing. I think I did 3 colors in total, so we will be using the rest of the paints as well. So I'm just painting in some petals in a completely random order, leaving some gaps for the other shades of petal as well. This orangey color that we're using right now is the main petal color of the sunflowers, so the majority of the petals should be this color. Again, for the sunflowers in the background, the petals are a lot smaller so that they appear like they're in the distance. So now I'm adding some more orange into that color that we already had, and I'm mixing in that orangey color that we made earlier. And I'm going to start on the next shade of petals. So again, I'm not filling in all of the gaps between the petals yet because we still have 1/3 shade coming, but I am putting this randomly in between a few of those petals. The brush that I'm using at the moment is an Arteza round 4-0 brush. I forgot to mention that before. So now taking the lighter shade of petal, I'm taking just primary yellow and mixing it in with that yellow-orange color and a tiny bit of white. And I'm just filling in all of the gaps that we've left between the petals. Now taking that same cast art brush that we used for the clouds, I'm mixing the yellowy orange with primary yellow, and I'm just dabbing this paint in the background to make up those sunflowers in the distance of the field. It's quite a satisfying step. It's very messy and there's no neatness to it at all. It's very, very satisfying to do. Now taking some Hooker's green and mixing that with Mars black, I'm going to start painting in some leaves. So I'm using the same Arteza brush that we used to do the petals, and essentially I'm just painting some random sized ovals. I try to vary the size of these and the angle or direction in which they're facing. And I'm basically just filling up the space in between the sunflowers with these. Again, I try to make the leaves in the distance a bit smaller in order to introduce some perspective to the painting. So that's why they're a lot smaller in the background than in the front. Now taking some of that second petal color, I am dabbing this into the sunflowers in the background using that same cast art brush. Again, this is totally random and very messy, and I'm just blending it out with that same color that we used before. Next, taking some primary yellow and a bit of white, I'm also adding that into the background just to blend all of those three colors together. Now taking some Mars black, I'm going to start filling in all the gaps between the leaves and the petals. This is quite a tedious step, I will admit. It's definitely the stage which takes the longest in this painting, but I found that if I painted the black first, then the colors of the sunflowers and the leaves didn't show up nearly half as well, so it's definitely worth mapping those out first and then going around the background in black. So all I'm doing here is just outlining the petals and the leaves using my Arteza detail brush and then filling it in using the black paint. I definitely find it easier to outline everything first before filling it in. I find that I make a lot less mistakes when I do that. So it's just a tip that I recommend doing, but of course you could do it your own way. Now taking some Mars black with some burnt umber to create that same shade that we used when making the color for the center of the sunflowers, I am dotting this into those distant sunflowers using the same Arteza brush that we've been using the whole time. These I am doing quite messily and varying the pressure that I'm using on the brush in order to create different sized dots. These can be quite messy, and I think that looks fine. Here I'm just taking some Mars Black by itself and adding in some little dabs of paint in order to create the effect of some gaps in the field. Now I'm just taking some of the same colour that we used to do the petals, and I'm going over the edges of these petals over the black paint. I do this because if I don't do it, it looks like the petals look really spiky and kind of out of place, and they stand out a lot more, and I think it looks a lot less natural. So I'm just going over the edges of all of the petals of both the large sunflowers and the small sunflowers. And I'm also going over the edges of the distant sunflower field as well. And then I'm doing the same again, but using a different shade of petal colour. Now taking some brilliant yellow green and mixing it with hooker's green, I'm going over some of these leaves because I feel like they kind of blend into the background when you don't do this step. And then adding some more of the brilliant yellow green, I'm just highlighting some sides of those leaves. I tend to only highlight one side of the leaves. I don't really know why, I just think it looks better, but you could do both sides. Now taking some of the red, mixing it with the orangey yellow, I am adding this to the edges of the petals and also to the center of the sunflowers. I'm not doing this on every single petal, just a few of them. I think it just adds a bit more depth to the sunflowers and they look a lot less flat after you've done this step. I'm also going to add this colour to the sunflowers in the distant field as well. Now taking some Mars Black, I'm going to add in a little, I guess it's a mountain or a range of mountains in the background, and I'm just using the same Pro Art brush that we used to do the tails of the clouds. This again, completely random, just a wonky line essentially. And I make it a little bit thicker. I really like this step. I think it really ties the whole painting together and it creates a distinction between the sky and the sunflowers. This is the last step. I'm just taking some titanium white on that Arteza brush and adding some tiny dots to the center of the sunflowers. I don't think sunflowers actually have white dots in the center, but I think it just makes them look a little less flat and adds some more detail to the centers of the sunflowers. I'm also going to add this white paint to the distant sunflowers as well, just in the areas where there is black or burnt umber. And there you have your finished field of sunflowers. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. I'll see you guys next week.